Hey, this is Chris, and this is the C&D channel presenting MMA for you. This is going to be a UFC Fight Night 22 post-fight analysis. Please leave any comments for me, and also you can also email us or me at the C&D channel at gmail.com. And also check back with us next Tuesday for the UFC 119 post-fight analysis. So let's get right to it. I'm going to start at the prelims of the card and go to the main card. Starting with Brian Foster's win over... Actually, before I do any of this, I just want to get some general statements and just some general analysis on Fight Night and what we can gather from it. One thing I want to really analyze is how someone like a David Branch, who had his first fight in the UFC and got a slam KO by Gerald Harris, can go and win his fight against Thomas Draw. I want to talk about this because if you're predicting stuff, because I was wrong in my prediction, I thought Branch would lose. And what ends up happening is, you got to consider that someone like Branch is fighting someone so good like Gerald Harris, and now he's fighting Thomas Draw, and it really allows these fighters who are new to the UFC, who may have had the octagon jitters, to pretty much show what they have. Because against Harris, Branch couldn't show what he had. Against, Brian Foster, got leg locked and knee barred by Chris Lytle in less than a minute, goes out today. TKO's worst pets. It really goes to show that I know the idea of MMA is you're only as good as your last fight, but for a lot of these young guys or new people to the UFC, it's not always the case actually. A lot of these people get thrown into the wolves really quick, and you can't really see what they have. So it's definitely something I got to think about when I predict these days, because you don't always see the best of someone, especially in the first fight in the UFC. The other thing I want to just talk about in general is just the idea of prospects and hyped prospects. I was really high on Rafael Natal, who didn't perform well. Ross Pearson was up and coming, and he lost his fight. But Charles the Bronx Oliveira is now the next John Jones. I mean, there is something to be said about prospects. There's something to be said about hype that you can really take away from this last fight night. Pretty much, some guys will live up to the hype. I mean, the Bronx did something straight out of pro wrestling, pretty much, and showed some of the most flashiest offense I've seen in a while, since probably John Jones. This guy does a 1-2 outside leg kick so quick. I'm actually doing it in class now. I've been hitting everyone in class with that 1-2, which is almost like the 1-2 punch is almost like a feint for the leg kick. It's really cool. But other guys, some guys will be hyped. Ross Pearson, he's coming off a couple wins. Expected to beat Cole Miller. Doesn't beat Cole Miller. It's not like he's done, but it's this guy's really hyped up. All of a sudden, he's now back down to earth. I was hyping up Rafael Natal because he beat Travis Lutter. Loses to, from the guy from the Ultimate Fighter, Rich Antonito. So it really goes to show, especially if you're betting too, it's really something to consider. Hype is one thing to consider if you're a serious bettor or something. Or even going back to what I was saying about David Branch or Brian Foster. If you're betting, maybe a person's last performance is, maybe they're thrown to the wolves and maybe they didn't get to show the best that they could show. Or with prospects, maybe some guys are overhyped. Maybe some guys are hyped just right. So it's definitely something to think about when you're predicting stuff and if you're better. So let's get on to the actual show. Now, Brian Foster TKOs for his pets. I actually predicted this one. Brian Foster's really good, actually. I mean, he got knee barred by Chris Lytle pretty badly. I saw him beat Brock Larson. I expect, and he had a really good fight with Rick Story, if I'm not mistaken. I see a good future for Brian Foster. I think he's pretty well rounded. And I want to say he trains the like Militage, or I think he trains with Hit Squad actually, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely he can make some waves in the future in the welterweight division. That he's beat Larson. That's pretty cool. Well, these days it's not like the biggest one, but he can definitely fight some mid tier guys already. Foster's definitely good enough to for like the middle of the pack type of the division. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight someone like maybe a Matt Brown. I know Matt Brown's already fighting Rory McDonald, but something like that. It'd be an interesting fight. I see good things for Brian Foster. Force Pats, not so much. To be honest, I don't see much with this guy. To be honest. Next fight, Anthony Waldberger beats David Mitchell by unanimous decision. I did not pick this one correctly. I picked David Mitchell to win. This fight actually got the most submission attempts in UFC history. Waldberger is only like early 20s, so this guy's they're both still green. But Wahlberger, really young, he can definitely come up in the division. There's definitely, there's potential in this guy, for sure. He's, right now he's under the radar, so you'd probably expect him to see Wahlberger, and if Mitchell gets another fight, you'd probably expect him to see them both in the unaired prelims again. But being so young, and being in the UFC, it makes young guys get that much better, pretty much. So if you're like 22, you're already in the UFC, you won your first fight, most likely he's gonna be hungry. Like someone like Wahlberger is gonna be pretty hungry. So you can expect some big things from him. He could just wash out. You never know, but for the most part, you gotta look at prospects and be like, I usually like to think for the best. I like to be optimistic when I see someone young, even someone like a Todd Duffy, who got cut by the UFC, or someone like that. You're just so young, you can lose your next 4 fights and still be amazing down the line. Next fight is Rich Antonito versus Rich Antonito beat Rafael Natal. I was hyping up Natal pretty bad. He beat Luter. I thought was pretty impressive. Antonito was coming off a win over Jamie Yeager. Antonito, he trains off a really good camp in American Top Team. Natal, he's really good himself, actually. I can't recall who he trains with at the moment. But, Rich Antonito, I'm still not super impressed with him. He looks solid, what Antonito does, but he doesn't look great. You know what I mean? There's nothing about him to me that really stands out too much. But maybe he's still young. I think he's still in his 20s, so he can definitely get a lot better. But it's just one of those things where it's like, he's a good fighter. He really is a good fighter. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I kind of wonder if he's just gonna be in mid tier purgatory. He comes off like that type of guy who might be with the Ed Hermans or like the Kendall Groves, or it's just totally mid tier gatekeeper purgatory. Which isn't bad, and he could prove me wrong. If, maybe I'll see Antonito's next fight and just be like, wow, he just totally wrecked the guy. Maybe I'll see him against like a Tim Crater, Tom Lawler, Joe Dirksen, maybe Nate Quarry for Antonio. There's always fights in that. There's a lot of like mid tier, lower tier middleweights out there. Nate's just got to start on the bottom. It's right now. I know there's a lot of cuts going on. There's a couple cuts by the UFC going on, so maybe Natal will get another person who lost, and maybe it's a loser League Town fight or something. I can kind of see that happen. To be perfectly honest, he is a pretty hype prospect, but you never know. I don't really know what Joe Silva's thinking, or like if they need to cut the roster at the moment right now or something. But wouldn't surprise me if that happened. Next fight is David Branch beat Thomas draw by unanimous decision. I heard this was a really boring fight. I didn't actually get to see it. I know that Branch is a Renzo Gracie black belt, and Thomas Draw has always just been kind of like reckless brawler slash, jack of all trades, master of none. Pretty good, but not great at anything. So I actually picked Draw to win based on experience in the octagon, but and in the UFC. But Branch took it. From what I read, it was like he pretty much like took him down and stuff like that, control and stuff like that. Tough to see where Branch goes from here. He got killed by Harris. I mean, he didn't have much against Gerald Harris. I hear he wasn't super impressive in this fight either. I know Draw just got cut by the UFC. Maybe Strikeforce of Bellator and Draw's future. David Branch, he'll probably get some more another fight on the prelims, I'm guessing. Can't really say he's gonna fight. Maybe someone coming like from the Ultimate Fighter, the last middleweight season or something like that. It's like a McRae or something like that. Hard to say where he goes from here. Next fight after that was actually the fight of the night. It's Kyle Kingsbury versus Jared Hammond. I picked Kingsbury to win. Like, I've never actually been very impressed with Jared Hammond, to be perfectly honest. He always came off really sloppy to me. Kingsbury's actually still pretty young, so I don't see much in Kingsbury. I can't see him going any farther than, say, a Krzysztof Szynski, to be perfectly honest, who he lost to in the Ultimate Fighter. It's just, not surprising that fight tonight, Jared Hammond. He definitely gets into brawls a lot of times. I know he gets into a lot of slugfests and whatnot. And Kyle Kingsbury being new, not new, but just like having a really long layoff, I can kind of see him not exactly being totally polished. Good win by Kingsbury. Tough to say he's gonna fight, but I'm just guessing someone in the lower tiers of the division. Lower tiers. Yeah, it's tough to say right now who exactly he can fight at the moment. Hopefully he'll get a fight pretty soon. But yeah. So, and Jared Hammond, back to the drawing board. He always has fun fights, but I can't really see where he goes from here. So yeah, that's it for part 1 of this post-fight analysis. So just go to part 2 right after the jump. Thanks.